process that's best done whilst relaxing. I have to say that. It's the two portions of the nerve system. There's the fight and flight, which most of us are in the whole time, the sympathetic. But there's also the rest and digest, the parasympathetic. And I think it's important to make space for that. And for me, cooking a good meal and sitting down to eat it, presumably with friends or family, is an important activity. It adds to the quality of life, and therefore it also is a health-promoting activity.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you're spot on with that. I think it's one of those things that goes sort of funnily under the radar with this, of just how good it feels to really pay attention to that. I've noticed in myself that I tend to be quite receptive to the feeling of guilt, and as a result of that, not eating poorly and choosing to sort of really carve out some time for myself, I suppose, to take care of myself, has been something that I notice every single time I do or don't make the decision. I think the same thing. I think either I'm glad I've done that, or you don't feel good for doing this, why have you not done it? So goes the cycle. But I like as well what you've put there of the idea of sort of mindfulness being tied into this, because I think that is, essentially that's the cornerstone of everything that we branch out from here, is the point of mindfulness. It is the way that these medicines or these practices or these ways of just sort of checking in with yourself, how they make you feel. And I think that's really important for people to know, that there is there are certain things, this is going to sound very simple, but I think it might be something that isn't actually sort of recognised necessarily enough, is there are some things that will make you feel a lot worse, and there are some things that will make you feel a lot better. And it does seem to be that we opt for the thing that will make us feel worse as a result of being sort of the mirage of it, mate, of us thinking that's exactly what we want. And we don't pay a great deal of attention to the fact that, to the point of everything that you said today, there are a lot of these things that are perfectly within our reach, and if we just reach the hand out and go for them, we will feel much better for doing it.
Absolutely. Very well said. I think there's nothing wrong with simplicity, actually. I would add to that we're sort of back in discussions that we had near at the beginning of this talk, which centred around politics, for want of a better word, and that is that some of the habits to reach for certain things are fueled by mighty marketing machines. I mean, you mentioned McDonald's. They are a global corporation who has enough money to batter people through the TV screens with adverts and to present, McDonald's on every high street so that it's an easy option, and it's dirt cheap as well. Yeah. And for a lot of people, that's a very compelling kind of marketing strategy that they very readily fall into. Now, I think I once set foot inside a McDonald's when I was with my sister, who was food intolerant to all sorts of things, and she said the only chips I can eat are McDonald's. How on earth she worked that out, I don't know. And I actually went into a McDonald's with her to get this stuff. I didn't eat any of it. So I tend to stay away from places like that on principle. I think we call them McDonald's in this family. I'm not sure whether you can broadcast that, but
it's going to be broadcasted.
We're in the same territory as it's like the practice of putting all the sugar-laden goods, the sweets, the chocolates, etc., at the checkout. So you just go and check out your supermarket trolley, and you're immediately faced with all these things that if you have one of those right now, you're going to feel a little bit better for half an hour. Do you know what I mean? And so we're kind of coaxed and cajoled and educated into doing the wrong things and making the wrong choices. And I think this is another issue that we have to contend with. Training people to eat better. Now, one of the things I often do with herbal medicine is to say people out there, if they have cravings, sweet cravings in particular, very, very common, and there's a lot of diabetes, latent diabetes, etc. in our population as well. It's actually not that difficult to start pulling people's tastes away from that stuff. And part of the way you do that is, first of all, in herbal medicine, we could talk about this by the use of particular herbs. We can put things into herbs. I mentioned Siberian ginseng. but also we might talk about burdock, which is a very, very common, British wild plant, burdock root, which they use as a vegetable in some parts of the world, but has a very high content of inulin, which is a sugar-like substance that helps to sustain your energy levels but doesn't spike insulin. So it's super valuable in the treatment of blood sugar issues, whether it's hypoglycemia or diabetes, but certainly in regulating the appetite to sort of help us not to rely on unhealthy sugars and unhealthy sweet things, because the sweet taste energetically is really important. It's comforting, it's warming, it's sustaining, it does something for us. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just that the kind of sweets that are put in front of us are the wrong ones. They're based on refined sugar that will wreck your metabolism, if you carry on doing it in a very short space of time. So that's one thing. And then the other part of it is the bitter. So if you get good digestion, craving sweet things in Chinese medicine is a symptom of spleen qi deficiency, and what that means is that there's not enough energy to run the digestive system. So it's a direct consequence of a malfunctioning digestion or an inefficient digestion. So to optimize digestion by the use of the herbs I was mentioning earlier, the bitter herbs, is one of the most important things you can do to train people to start not to want those unhealthy options.
Yeah, and I think what you're touching on there is probably one of the most eminent problems of society now, is that constant want of the sugar, of the sweet thing in front of us. And as you say, there is, whether people like it or not, there's a tremendous amount of political bearing here. This is profit, and it's money. Where money is concerned, a lot of the time, wholesomeness and goodness as a whole are not. And as you say, this is perfectly clear. You go into any supermarket or any place that sells any of these nefarious, I suppose, products.
Yeah.
It's obvious. You can tell. It's the way I actually worked just on the point of your McDonald's. I watched an advert a few days ago, as you say, because they're on so consistently, and it was a sausage McMuffin, and there was a very slow pan around the sausage McMuffin with this high definition photo. It looked delectable, it looked lovely, and it says breakfast done properly.
Yeah.
And you think, it's so enticing, and it's so obviously enticing, and you put it with the tagline as well, and of course it comes out and culminates in a desire. And as you say as well, the marketing scheme here of the fact that these things are so cheap, which is quite commonly the case just across bad food in general, it's all pretty cheap.
Yeah, it is.
It's the exploitation of our inherent function. As you say, sugar, or sweetness rather, has its purpose. It's not a inherently bad thing. It is when put in the hands of conglomerates who are infatuated with the progression of their finance.
Yeah. Nicely put.